Well, spiralers, we are actually recording this very episode for the third time.
Third time's a charm. That's what they say.
Yes, we actually recorded this episode and it was such a heartfelt, just such a present conversation. And when we finished, I realized we had only recorded 4 seconds.
Yeah, technical difficulty.
Yes.
So we decided to record this episode initially in my house. And we had set up the whole thing. We had all the different computers, all the wires, and you were like, go. And then you clicked it, and then we sat down. And yeah, it was this most honest, conscious conversation about friendships and the evolution of friendships. And we get up, we're like, that was great. We did a fist bump, went back, and you were like, what? And I was like, what? I was like, what? And you were like, it only recorded 4 seconds. And I could feel the sadness and the disappointment and the anger in your voice, which is why I was like, it's fine. It's fine.
You were super chill.
I was super chill.
Yeah.
Because only one person can be that
Freaking
upset
out. Yes.
at a time.
Yes. You were holding us down.
I was like, it's cool. It's cool. We'll just record it again. Which we did.
Which we did.
And the audio on that one, it wasn't the vibe. We actually thought about trying to salvage it for you guys because we've had this question so many times about conscious friendships, the markers of a conscious friendship. How do I have conscious friendships, attract conscious friendships? And because it was so important and dear to our hearts and yours, we just could not preserve that audio.
No, we even tried to release it just as a YouTube video, just as this bonus app, but yeah, it wasn't working for us. And the funniest part is that after we recorded the second time, we were like, oh, this one was better, so it's good.
Yeah.
This one we really hit all of the things we wanted to talk about, and then we couldn't release that one either.
Yeah.
So,
and then what I figured was at that point, I'm like, okay, I guess the universe just doesn't want me to talk about this right now. So we did record some other episodes, which I think were really valuable. The toxic relationship episode is out now, which I think will tie in really nicely with this.
Mm-hmm.
But, Gina and I recorded an episode over a year ago now called How to Have Conscious Conversations.
Yes.
And it was an episode that resonated really deeply with our audience because we brought so many of our tools and perspectives to that conversation. And it's what has helped us become more evolved in the way that we relate to each other.
Yeah.
And so we re-listened to it.
Yeah.
And you were like, man, we've grown a lot since then.
We've grown a lot. It was interesting to hear some of the things that we said, which I still agree with everything.
Which parts?
All of them. I mean, it was interesting because it was actually an introduction to our community, the Spiraling Higher community. And we were talking about our working relationship previous to this time, in real estate. And then one of the things that we both actually kept saying is how when one of us brings up a tough topic, that there's a tendency to get defensive, which I was like, interesting. We actually don't do that
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's been the evolution of our conscious partnership because I think the more conscious you become in a partnership, the more you've been willing to look at your own wounds, right?
Yeah.
The parts of you that are defensive and insecure, and we've healed those parts within ourselves. And so when there is something that's uncomfortable, right, that you bring up to me or I bring up to you, there is usually curiosity, no defensiveness.
Yeah, which I actually didn't remember that we used to be defensive. So it was really interesting to go back and listen to that. And it's not to say we're never going to get defensive again.
Totally.
But I think because we've had these conversations so many times now, it's just a smoother flow. I think we just kind of know the direction it's going to go. So there's no need for that defensiveness.
Absolutely. And I would say it was also contingent upon us both doing inner work.
Yeah.
Right? Because if only one person did it and the other person didn't, then one person is defensive and blaming still, which isn't exhausting the other person, which is actually what we talked about in the toxic relationships episode.
Yeah.
But this conversation really is so precious to us because we have watched ourselves consciously evolve through friendship for the last 5 years now. And it's interesting. We've actually seen a lot of clients who are either really close friends and developing conscious partnerships or are asking, how do I make my current relationships with friends more conscious? I love this person. I want them in my life, but they tend to distort what I say or I feel offended by what they're saying. And so long as there is defensiveness and blame and control, there cannot be deeper connection.
Yeah. And I think part of this episode that I really want to share is some storytelling about our friendship and the things that we go through, because I do think that there might be a perception that since we're so close that we don't have difficult conversations. I just think the types of difficult conversations we're having now have evolved along with our friendship. But one of the things that I want to share is actually a story we've told twice already, but no one's heard it yet. So we're going to tell it again. When we went to our retreat in Mexico, it was actually really funny because leading up to that retreat, you and I hadn't really had a chance to connect that much.
It was like a week. It was literally a week of very minimal talking.
Yes.
But we worked together, right? So there were a lot of professional conversations that week because we're preparing for something that's work related.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I sensed that you were going through things personally. You sensed that I was. I was in a weird period of time moving from place to place, and I wasn't able to share it with you, and you weren't able to share your things with me. But we were like, whatever, we'll see each other at the airport. Like, we're literally going on a trip together for our shared business. It's fine. But I mean, the funniest thing happened when we got there, and it was this admission of what you would probably consider silly or stupid. At least I would have shamed myself and rejected myself in the past for saying it. But I walked up to you after the first hug, and then I pulled you away, or I pulled away from our hug, and I said, hey, are we still best friends?
And I was actually going to ask you
the same
thing. I actually had it in my phone of airport talk with Sam. And I was like, are we still best friends? And obviously it was playful. I knew we were still best friends, but we instantly were like, wait, why did we both feel like that? And I think it brought up, I mean, many conversations from that. We talked for like another 7 hours. And I think it just highlighted that it makes sense that there feels like there's a bit of a disconnection when we haven't had more actual personal conversations. So that actually showed us, hey, you know what? Since we work together, we've really got to make that an extra intention to have these more personal conversations, which we've always had this intention, but it was a good reminder of, hey, this is what the relationship needs. This is what I need. I want more of our connection time, not just like work-related time. So that was pretty good for us to establish, but also really funny to know that, oh, wow, like it's not just in my head.
Yeah.
Like you feel it too.
Yeah. And what's really important is that, I mean, we felt that at the same time, so it might be different if one of us didn't feel it.
True.
But let's just say I did not feel that way and you had, I wouldn't be like, what are you talking about? Like, we're like best friends, like stop being so weird. Or like, you know, like don't make it weird. But instead obviously I felt the same way, so I wasn't able to judge. I got to be validated. But on either side of that exchange, to be validating of like, oh my God, like I hate that you feel that way.
Yeah.
And like making sure that it makes sense that that person feels that way and not blaming or judging yourself, because that's when things become a bit unconscious. When someone brings something to you and it's emotion filled, right? Because we don't bring things up that we don't have emotion around.
No, that would be really weird.
Yeah, like then it's just small talk, right?
Yeah.
And we exchange like a good deal of quote unquote small talk as well, as in like not heavy things.
Yeah.
Right? But when we are bringing up something that clearly feels emotion driven, it's so important in a conscious relationship that you validate the emotion, not the story. And that is something that we do for each other time and time again, because there are times where I bring you my story, right? But what you see underneath is she's really angry, or like she's feeling irritated, or she's feeling insecure. And what's interesting is you have done such an incredible job of increasingly knowing how to speak to each of those emotions, not tell me that's so ridiculous, or like don't be crazy, or like don't make shit up in your head. It's like there's almost no need to talk about the story, because once my emotion is regulated, actually I have a better non-distorted view of my own story. Like once my emotion has been validated, I can be like, yeah, I kind of see what I did there. Like you didn't even try to do that or whatever. Like maybe I say like, you haven't responded to my text in like a week. I don't think I've actually ever said that.
You've never said that.
But let's just say that's something that comes up a lot. Like
Yes.
you haven't responded to my messages. You haven't responded to my calls. But what the emotion behind that is insecure. I'm feeling a loss of connection. Like I'm missing you.
Yes.
And if you respond to the missing you, then all of a sudden my need has been filled. And then I go, Yeah, I definitely overreacted to like the no text thing. Like, I can see that you've been really busy and like it makes sense. Like, I just want to make an effort to like, like schedule that call once a week or whatever. But we can't engage in that way until you see the need underneath my behavior. And until, frankly,
Yes.
I also see my
Yes.
need underneath the behavior.
Which I think our relationship allows that inquiry to happen within you without that judgment, right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing that a lot of, I would say, unconscious friendships have is that they don't take that time to ask, like, what does that feel like for you? They usually will kind of go to, with good intentions, they kind of just go to the solution.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, like, don't worry about that. That doesn't even matter. Or, oh, that's so crazy that you think that. Of course, I'm still your best friend, which, like you said, doesn't actually speak to the emotion. Where I think for you and I, there is this
Mm-hmm.
kind of exploration of, oh, like, what did that feel like? And when did that start? And okay, so this is my interpretation. What are you hearing when this happens? And I think it's been
Mm-hmm.
so interesting to see how differently we can interpret the same circumstance, which we've talked about many times on the podcast. But I think if you are listening to this, you probably have either a conscious friendship already or you desire to have one. And yeah, I just think it's important to know that.
Yeah. And what I will also say is a hallmark of a conscious relationship is that both parties understand that there's no objective reality or truth.
Yes.
There's no such thing as this is the truth and you have strayed.
Yeah.
And I am right, right? There is no objective truth. There is what you perceive to be truth based on what you've experienced and how you've interpreted my actions or words. And then there's my subjective experience of the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we have a conversation about something that's bringing up discomfort, what I acknowledge as I'm bringing up my perspective, I understand that there's an equal perspective that is equally true to you that I am willing and open to hear and observe.
Mm.
And I'm not going in thinking I have to make her see mine,
Yeah.
right? It's more like you and I put both of our subjective views on the table
Yes.
and we're like, this is what I saw. This is what I experienced. And it's not me saying you have to accept this. You have to take
Yes.
this. You have to
Yes.
accept it as truth. This was my interpretation. This is my felt experience because of those interpretations. And gaslighting is essentially when you say that's not true and that experience cannot be true because I don't see it the same way. Right? When we validate someone, we don't say, I agree with all of your perspectives. We agree that if you were to perceive the situation in this way, it would make sense that you felt that way. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
perceive my no texting and no answering calls as me not caring about you, it makes sense then that you feel insecure about our friendship.
Yeah.
Not, well, I'm not ignoring your text messages. I'm not responding to your call. That's crazy that you feel so insecure. Like you shouldn't feel that way. Now notice how a huge wall is going to come up in me. And then anytime I feel this way, I'm just going to ignore how I feel. And now we start to drift
Mm.
and blame. I'm just going to think you're a B for not answering any of my texts.
Totally. And I mean, that kind of goes into the toxic friendship conversation too, because then there's now no safety for you to bring that up. I think one of the things that you said is you shouldn't feel that way.
Shouldn't feel
And
that
we've
way.
never said that.
Never. I mean, I was honestly surprised at the number of times where I brought you an emotion that even I was judging within
Totally.
myself. I'm like,
Yes.
I'm being like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And I'm like judging myself. And you were like, no, like, that totally makes sense. And I'm like, it does.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you sure? You're like, yeah. Like, if I felt that way or if like I interpreted the situation that way, like, I would 100% feel like that.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, so you're not mad? I'm like, so like I was
Right.
actually bracing myself for a lot of the blame and defensiveness that I was used to. And you met me with so much validation. And it didn't mean that you agree with my story.
I was just going to say that. I think in a lot of times I've even said, I don't think I would have reacted to that same thing the same way. Here's how I would have interpreted that. But I can see where your brain went and where your body went, and that makes sense. And so I think even being able to have space for both perspectives and both interpretations to be there and to be able to discuss them to such great lengths that
Mm-hmm.
the understanding level is so much deeper, even deeper
Yeah.
than like, I mean, even a year ago, where I feel like I'm understanding the SAM manual and like instruction booklet so much more because I can see, oh, that makes sense. Now, that being said, another key thing to remember in these types of relationships is not to assume anything about the other person because one thing that's actually been really interesting about our relationship is I'm learning that you're actually just as sensitive as I am.
Yeah, I used to come off like a hard ass.
Just
Like
kind of
in the first couple
nothing
years.
bothers me. That wouldn't bother me at all. I wouldn't get, feel sensitive about that. That wouldn't hurt my feelings. Very much that way. And you did kind of pride yourself on that, this ability to kind of not give a shit about things that don't quote unquote matter. And I'm the person that's like this soft, marshmallow, sensitive person. And so I would assume certain things wouldn't bother you. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, it would bother me, but not Sam. And there have been some things that did end up bothering you.
Yeah, well, there's been an evolution of my own needs and my consciousness. So, before I was pretty avoidant. Like, I'd be like, that's stupid. Like, who cares? And now I'm like, that's kind of stupid, but I'm hurt. Like, and I'm feeling my feelings more, right?
Yes.
And so what's interesting is that you and I both have had to make adjustments to like our own mental model of Gina and Sam, because you also used to hate words of affirmation.
Yes. I mean, it was a season of time.
Yeah.
I think in the I in general likes words of affirmation, but in the context of us starting to work together, I was finding it triggering. Not like I was angry, but it was kind of clashing with my own inner work because I was learning how to validate myself and not to rely on external validation. And so the more Sam kept saying to me, like, you're great, you're this, you're that, I was like, no, I'm not. And she's just lying. And so I did tell her, like, I don't think you need to do that for now. And then I ended up telling you at the retreat, I think I'm ready for some affirmations.
Yeah. And imagine if I was like, what the fuck? Like, you hate those. Like, or like, I tried to give you those last year and you were like, you didn't want me to say that kind of stuff. But instead, I clocked it and I acknowledged it as, okay, she's now expressing that that's her current need.
Yes.
And so I think that's so important. It's what is current and present in the truth of this moment. How can we not use our past to judge and confuse the person's, like, how can I just see you truthfully in this moment instead of being like, but you weren't like that before?
Yes.
Or like, you never cared before if I like did XYZ, but it's like, but you care right now.
Exactly.
And how you feel right now is way more important to me than me digging up into the past and being right about all the times that I didn't or whatever. And so, yeah, that was actually really funny when you mentioned that, because it didn't even dawn on me to be like, but you didn't want that before. But we joked about that after.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. After I was like, oh, okay. Like, that makes, okay. Like, I could do that. I remember I was like, that I'll do it. You were like, thanks.
You were and then you started immediately.
Yeah. And then I started right away. I remember we were like going to bed at night and you'd already put in your earplugs, but I didn't know that. And I was like, I just want to say that you were just really on fire today. Like, you were so awesome. You were like, what? Like, you like pulled out your earplug and you were like, what? And I was like, oh, I was just offering you some words of affirmation. And you were like, oh, tell me tomorrow.
I was trying to go to bed. But you did try to implement that. And it was really nice to be able to name, hey, this is a need of mine. And to even refine that further, like if I were to say, oh, I actually think I want more words of affirmation in this context and whatnot. And I remember asking you, like, do you want words of affirmation? Because I perceive you to be somebody that is just naturally quite confident. And so I noticed in my own pattern, oh, I'm actually not even verbalizing to you all the times that I think you're amazing or whatever, that what you shared was really impactful. Because in my own mind, I'm like, oh, she already knows that. And so in that moment, I was like, wait, no, I should be saying those things to you. And I can't remember what you said.
I said something funny, kind of like, I feel like people never tell me I did a good job.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, they really don't.
They don't.
Like, I never get good job from anyone. It's really weird. Like, even like my husband, like I come home and there's like some big thing I've done and he's like kind of like, that's you.
Yeah,
like,
that's
kinda,
awesome.
Yeah, or like, that's great,
Yeah.
but not like a great job. And it's not that I really need it. I don't know. I started to feel a little bit like, it'd be nice to hear it every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know? And I told you, and you
Yeah.
were like, oh, like there's actually many times where I think to say it, but I don't.
Yeah.
But thanks for sharing.
Totally.
Right? And I think like, especially with girl friendships, I think we're so afraid of being petty. Like, oh, this is so stupid. Like, oh, she's gonna like judge me for this, or like, why am I being such a baby about this? But I say fully allow the petty, but see it as your own inner child requesting something.
Yes.
Not something stupid or idiotic, right? It only becomes stupid and idiotic if I actually believe that you are a bad person in some way for not having offered me the petty need that I have. But if I
Yeah.
like acknowledge and own my like slight pettiness where I'm like, I felt kind of slighted like the last time you didn't tell me good job, but like I know this is just like a me thing. And then you're like, "Oh my God. I always like good job." Like what do you, like
Yes.
I didn't realize you wanted me to say that. Like of course I think you're doing a good job and then I'm like, "Okay, I'm fine now." Right? Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pettiness dissipates, but it can really start to like increase and essentially the pettiness can turn into toxicity.
Oh, yeah,
But let's just
absolutely.
keep it at pettiness, right? Like I think we all have an inner petulant child who's like, "What about me? Like, did you notice that?"
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we just express that without blaming the other person. We just say like, "I feel like I need a little like extra love today," instead of like,
Yes.
"You're not answering
Yeah.
my text," or like, "You're not telling me good job. You're not loving me the way that I want." But just like, "I feel like tender and like
Because I think
I
the
miss you."
difference is when we share with each other, it's more the focus is more on how I feel, not what you did to quote unquote make me feel that way. It's never about what you said or did. It's hey, when this happened, this is how I felt. This is what came up for me. And the I will name too in these kind of conscious friendships
Mhm.
and conscious best friendships, be open to that evolution and know that the first couple of conversations, maybe even the first 10, might not feel like this. And we actually were reminded of the first time I brought something up to you. And I think we talked about this in the toxic friendship episode that I was shaking in my boots. I think that's the words you used. And it was really uncomfortable. And even some of the first times you brought something to me where you just instantly thought, I already know this is a me thing. And like, I know this is stupid. And I think you've
Mhm.
softened that even because I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not stupid. Like, how could that be stupid if that's how you feel? And you're like, you don't think it's stupid?
I'm like, how I feel isn't stupid. So, again, like I had to really learn how to validate my own feelings. Otherwise, I can't even bring them to you. And now
Yeah.
I'm just like boiling in, I don't know, like hidden agenda and like anger and maybe even boiling up to resentment. And that's what starts to begin to crumble the conscious friendship.
Yeah.
And so the conscious friendship, what I will say is that I feel like it needs constant adjustments.
Yeah.
It's not a setting that you just set. It's like imagine a temperature, what do you call those thingies?
Thermostat.
Thermostat, yes. You set it at say like 72 degrees. Anytime it goes beneath that, the setting is what brings it like back up. And vice versa. If it goes higher than that, the AC kicks on so it comes back to that. That's how I see conscious friendships. It's not something that I just like put on cruise control.
Yeah.
It's something that needs constant adjusting. It's like, how are you today? How am I today? How did that make me feel? And it's worth it because I care so much about the connection. Now, if you are someone who has ignored your own personal needs for so long, someone coming to you with needs, or maybe they're like inner child being like, hey, like I need a little extra, that's going to feel intolerable to you. You're going to be like, I don't have space for that. Or like, you're asking for too much. But that's because you believe your own feelings are too much for yourself. And so I truly believe the secret ingredient to any conscious relationship is a conscious relationship to self, your inner child. If you don't have that, you don't know how to meet other people's needs. You've never met your own.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of a quote. I think it's by Matt Kahn. And he says, you can only meet someone as deeply as they've met themselves.
Yeah. And so if someone has the need to be seen in their vulnerability, but you have shamed yourself out of any form of vulnerability, then when someone comes to you with something, you're going to be like, why are you being such a baby? Like, and I've actually said that before. Like, I'll like, have I said that directly to you?
No,
I
I
don't
don't.
think I've
You've
ever.
never said call me a baby, but I would probably cry. I would have like, been
But
like,
I
okay,
know
bye.
I've said that to people before.
For sure.
For sure. Like I've been like, you are being a fucking baby. And this was
Yes.
like the unhealed avoidant version of me because I mean, I was someone who if I felt sad, I'm like, you're being a fucking baby. Like that's how I talk to
Yeah.
myself. And so I couldn't meet people consciously in an emotion like that. And so my ability to foster conscious relationships has been through the fertile soil of the relationship I've been building with myself. And so if you are someone who's like, I don't know why my relationships keep turning toxic or like why these people keep blaming me and like letting me down or like why I keep letting other people down, you got to look within. Like what is going on between you and you? How do you meet and hold space for all of your emotions? Because the better I got at meeting pettiness, sadness, insecurity, anger, jealousy, the better I got at meeting all of those, Then when you bring them, I'm like, open space.
100%.
Emotional safety. I'm right here. I'm not judging that. I'm trying to understand that and frankly soothe that. That's what we do as friends. Like, who else do you go to than your friends?
Yeah, and I think with conscious friendships, in my opinion, the clear difference between a conscious friendship and maybe like a regular friendship is that in a conscious friendship, you can actually talk about the other person and the way that they trigger you. Because I think in most friendships, it's about, oh, my partner said this or my boss said this. And the relationship is—
You're talking about other people who
other
bother you.
people.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, oh, like, screw that person. Or like, oh, like, you know, you were right. But it's much harder when you're talking about you.
No, I'm talking about you.
Yeah, it's like you triggered me.
I'm like, you made me feel jealous.
Yes. And so I think that is kind of where I feel like we started to dabble more into that conscious friendship. I mean, we did this since day one pretty much, but it really was when we started talking about each other to each other.
Yeah.
And being able to receive that as if you weren't talking about me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the defensiveness. I was focusing more on your feelings, not on my involvement or my perspective or my story. It was really just holding space, like I said, as if I was listening about somebody else.
I mean, you frankly are. You're listening to someone's projection of you, not
so true.
you. So I think that's like really deep inner work, is to realize, okay, someone's idea of me or thoughts about me are not me. I am my own awareness, right? So when you come to me or have come to me and said like, I felt this way when you did this, and then I can hear almost like your assumptions about my character or whatever. I mean, that's what makes people defensive. It's like, that's not who I am.
Right.
It's like, of course it's not. This is what someone is perceiving you to be. But if you can sit there with that knowing, then you're not crazy triggered by what someone is saying about you. I understand. I'm like, this is Gina's projection and story about me. Okay. And I want to validate that projection and story about me created a somatic felt sense in your body. And it's uncomfortable, and that's why you're bringing it. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Right? But if I then mistake and blend with your projection of me, now I have to defend my self-image.
Right.
Which is ego.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm not someone who does that. No, you were wrong about that. I never do that, right? Instead, I understand who I am fully in this present moment, and I accept your projection as a projection. I mean, frankly, it's the same with like getting negative comments, like on social media, right? And we've both, I don't know, have you received any?
Honestly, no. But
I'm proud of you.
Well, that's not, I think it's just you have such a huge following and there's a lot of people commenting. I mean, there's a lot of creepy people that message, but I don't think I've had a negative. Actually, no, I have. I did.
You did.
I did. It was somebody that I did a post about something about when you don't need external validation, like that's when you're free, or when you seek inner validation, something to that effect.
Right.
And then somebody commented, oh, if you don't need that validation, like why do you have to wear makeup? Which wasn't really a negative comment, but kind of just
but
like—
you were like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I literally just thought that's what you think, and that's totally fine. It really just is their opinion and their own thoughts.
It is just what they think. It's literally what they think. So now when people bring me, and I'm not perfect at this, right? But if people bring me something that makes me appear negative, or like maybe even tarnishes the egoic identity I have of myself, I am able to, for the most part, be able to think that's just what they think.
Right.
Right? And actually, the more open I am to your perception of me, the more open you are to changing what you think.
True.
Which is actually, that's like the weirdest like Chinese finger trap of like a situation ever. Because the more I deny your perception of me, the stronger that perception of me becomes. The more willing I am to like yield and be like, I totally understand like why you would perceive me that way. My actions could have come across that way. Now all of a sudden you're like, but now you're not acting like that. Kind of like suddenly I'm giving you counter evidence to the thing that you are bringing to me.
Yes.
And so it's like in any debate, right? I'm going to be more open to your side if you do not reject me for mine. If you get curious about how I formed mine, now I'm more open to hearing your own input. Now we can have a conversation. Otherwise, it's just going to be a fight.
Yeah. And I think the other key marker between us has been there is a level of trust that we both know that neither one of us is going to get caught up in that projection. Like, we don't even need to do that part anymore. Like, if I bring something to you, there's already a common, like, ground of understanding that I know that what I'm thinking is a distortion and what I'm bringing to you. Like, I already know that. And you already know that I know that. And so we don't need to do the part of, I know you didn't mean it like this, or I know we can just kind of skip that part and just go right to the meat of it, which
Is the
again,
feeling.
which is a feeling. But it did take time. So I just really want people to hear, because we've had, like Sam said, multiple people reach out to us. I mean, even our own clients who've chatted with us about their conscious friendships, and we just want everyone to know, like, this is how you get there. Is you do need to go through stuff, and you get to evolve together and build that trust. And I think that's what every conscious conversation between us has allowed for, is a building of that trust.
Yeah, and it's so funny because like everyone wants to be close, but no one wants to be uncomfortable.
Ooh, so good.
It's like, oh, like I want to be best friends, or like I want to have this like deep, like vulnerable, like raw cosmic connection. And it's like, yeah, the root to that is shadow work and
Yes.
discomfort. Because if I never talk about anything uncomfortable with you and any of my triggers maybe that happen in relation to you, then we're just acquaintances.
Yeah.
Like, and I can do that all day, any day with anyone. Like, I can talk about the weather, I can talk about climate, I can talk about the politics, I can talk about pop culture. Like, I can do that all day, but does that make us close? Because as soon as I start talking to someone about uncomfy shit, I'm like, we're going there.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you trust me.
Yes.
And like, I trust you, because where is there trust if I don't give you anything? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that the scariest thing to give one another, once again, is something that's happening between you two.
Yeah.
Because of course, in the beginning, it's like, ooh, like, is she going to understand that I'm not pointing the finger at her? This is just how I felt in that situation. And yeah, I love that you said that about being willing to be uncomfortable. I think when we think about the things that we desire in our life, we have to also be open to considering, what would I have to be willing to feel in order to have that thing? And so to your point, if you want to have this conscious, open, raw, honest conversation or relationship with your conscious friend, you would have to then be willing to experience discomfort in conscious conversations. And it is really scary. And sometimes it is what's going to be the indicator to show you, can this relationship be conscious in this moment? And I think for us, we both constantly open the door for, yes, we can.
Yeah, because there has to be vulnerability.
Yeah.
And vulnerability is so hard because there is a chance, there's a risk that you're opening yourself up to, that I'm going to bring this person something that's really uncomfy and scary for me, and it might be rejected.
Yeah.
And I might feel more hurt.
Yeah.
And that is a terrifying place to be. I mean, as someone who has like healed a lot of avoidant shit, like when I felt like sad or like rejected, like that's already like horrifying for me. So the idea that I'm going to bring it to you or someone else I care about and they'd be like, yeah, that's stupid, that's dumb, like get over it.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's like more gut punch because it's actually reflecting what I've already been doing to myself. It's like a second stab of the same wound. But we cannot be close without vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so I remember in the beginning of our friendship, we were like, oh my God, like I wonder when we're gonna have our first fight. Like we've never had a fight. Like I could never see us like arguing. And I wouldn't say we've ever argued because we've never gone into like the my reality, your reality, I'm right, you're wrong. We are always willing to bring the subjective truths and like craft one that feels supportive to both of us and validates both stories. But it was so funny because in the beginning I thought that a good friendship would be the one where basically nothing ever happens.
Yes.
Like, but if nothing's ever happening, there's no expansion, right? There's no growth. Like, we're just talking about the weather, like on different days of different years. But I thought the thing, it's so funny that I feared so much was the thing that actually got me closer to what I wanted.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you brought up the avoidant stuff because mine is more of an anxious attachment. So for me, the internal fear was, if I bring this up, is she going to leave?
Yeah.
Which is so funny. And so I needed to experience what bringing these things up would feel like with you. And ultimately, if that did mean you were going to leave, well, now I know.
Now you got to let me leave.
Totally. Like,
right.
Now I know this is not, the friendship that will be that conscious kind of relationship that I was seeking. And that's also okay too. But it's usually what we fear. That's the direction you need to go in.
Yeah, because also too, you're not going to be in a close relationship with someone that's constantly rooted in fear. Like, a close relationship is marked by love. So how could it be possible that we're so close if I like live in like this imminent fear of you leaving or rejecting me or thinking I'm dumb or stupid? It's like I have to face that fear and then be shown that it's not true to actually feel loved. It's like, oh my God, this worst fear of me bringing this like story and feeling and the fear of rejection or being outcast, I need to bring that. And then when you show me that you're not going to do that, I'm like, that's how I know I'm loved. And I think that that's the other thing too is I don't want to like condone negative behavior in saying this, but I do find that by bringing the uncomfortable shit, it's like that's how I know I am loved. Because if I only ever brought you like, oh my God, I'm so happy and I love you and I think you're perfect and blah, blah, blah. It's like, does she like me? Or like, does she just like me because I'm, always people pleasing and I'm always happy?
Well,
Right?
it's only
Like,
really liking one part of you.
exactly. It's like, and I think a lot of people are in relationships where they feel like, but if they actually knew the truth, they would leave. Or like if they knew the truth, like there's no way like we'd be able to be friends. And like that's not a truthful relationship and it's not truthful to yourself. And so I had to bring, and you did too, the things that I thought would be like, this is it. Like this is it. I'm like, she is gonna think I'm crazy. Like she's gonna leave. And you just sat there and you were like, I get that. Or better yet, me too.
Or I'm like, I love you more.
I love you more. That was the shocking thing for me, guys. I think when I brought some of the most like, I don't want to talk about this, like stuff, and I felt like it was literally, I mean, it was the shadow work I was doing on myself too, because I thought I was becoming a lesser version of myself, but really I was becoming more whole. I was learning to accept all the parts, but I was like, no, like these parts are terrible, right? And then I brought them and you were like, I feel like I know more of you and now there's like more to love. And I was like, what, you like this? I'm like, this? Like, no way.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, no, I love it more. It's like you said, it's like seeing all the colors. It's like all the seasons. It's like I'm getting a fuller experience of you, and it makes me know and trust you even more deeply. And I think it also provides a template. Like whoever goes first, right? That's permission for the other person to be like, oh my God, I've been wanting to talk about this thing too. And you're like, and now there's a closeness because it was the scary, vulnerable thing that brought you together.
Yeah, something you said to me one time, because I think I said to you like, oh, I didn't even want to bring this up. And you said, but then I can't meet you where you are. And that was a huge thing for me. And so again, time and time again, as we had these conversations, I knew if I don't share this, and keep in mind, you get to choose when you bring this up. It doesn't have to be like immediately. But I just knew that I needed to share certain things so that you can meet me where I was. And as long as I was unwilling to do that, we were kind of, in this alternate reality almost.
Yeah.
And I was hiding these parts of myself. And because we are so close, I don't want to have to hide those things. And so this actually brings up the next topic I want to touch on, because I think when it comes to conscious friendships, especially when you both are doing the work, there is this tendency to not want to experience certain things in the context of the relationship. And one of the most prominent feelings and emotions that I think people experience but don't want to is jealousy and comparison, which are kind of the same thing, but not really. And I think that was one of the things that I definitely felt really shameful for feeling and experiencing and didn't want to bring that up, because I was like, I don't know, like is she gonna think this is dumb? And there's no reason for us to feel jealous. But jealousy is such a beautiful emotion for so many different reasons.
I love it.
I love it.
No, like I actually love it now because I'm like, it's such a illuminator for me.
It really is.
I'm like, oh, like that's okay.
What does it illuminate for you?
For me, it illuminates where I'm not fully being embodied and expressed. And oftentimes there's something I'm clearly observing in someone that I want to activate or I want to express. And it's a suppressed energy within myself. And so I'll just tell you, everyone who's listening, like one of the things I felt really jealous of about Gina is like, okay, like anytime anyone works with us together or goes on retreat with us, everyone's like, oh my God, like Gina's like our mother. Like she's so soft and like caring and empathic. Oh, it's like I can cry to Gina. Like, and I'm just like, okay. Like I remember this, I felt this like just, I don't even know how to describe the emotion inside of me. I mean, the word is jealousy, but the actual somatic experience, it was just kind of like, if it could talk, it would be like, why am I not like that?
Right.
Like, why am I not like that? And of course, like what I'm believing in that moment, the belief of jealousy is that I'd be more loved if I could express like that, which actually is not true.
Yeah.
But also what it brought up for me was, and it was a huge lesson for the two of us, can I actually hold admiration for someone else's qualities without turning against myself?
Yeah.
Because what I actually got to view at our retreats was like, it's fucking amazing that people feel so held in Gina's motherly presence. Like, she's a Cancer through and through. She has 4 placements. So she does feel like a warm home and like a warm hug. And I love that. And it didn't need to be this thing where I'm like, why am I not like that? I can just actually hold and express the importance of it and the beauty of it, while also then looking at different qualities that I have and realize there's nothing to be jealous of. But what the jealousy is pointing out to me is like, okay, like where can I like soften a bit? Because clearly like I want to express that. But also, where can I just appreciate that in someone without turning against me? And that's the thing about jealousy, is it's always like an against you thing, right?
Yeah.
You don't get jealous if you just see someone doing their thing and you don't really care to do that. Like if someone's, I don't know, like if someone's a Formula One driver, I'm not jealous of that experience. I'm just like, cool.
Yeah.
Like, love that. Or if someone is, I don't know, like free diving all the time, it's like, that's really cool. Like, it's not something I'm like trying to become good at. So it's funny, there's no turning against myself. That only happens when there's clearly something in the other person that I'm wanting to express a bit more of.
Yeah.
And have the paired belief that I'd be more loved if I did.
Yeah.
Which is not true.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback off of that, something that I've really learned deeply through these conversations we had was that you really cannot fully see and appreciate somebody else and their gifts and in their wholeness until you fully see and appreciate your own.
Yeah.
And so for me, anytime I experienced jealousy with you, it was a clear marker of that's what I'm not seeing and appreciating in myself. And it's also, I think the dialogue is kind of like, why am I not like that? Because the thing that I was jealous of, and this is so funny because we talked about this at the retreat before the girls got there, and we just had this heart opening. We were both just sobbing on the beach at sunrise. And because it was so interesting, because I didn't know you had that perspective of me. And this is what's so funny, because at our first retreat for the unlayered self, that was kind of your internalization story of, oh, wow, like everybody thinks Gina's so motherly, I'm never going to be like that. Mine was, okay, first of all, every time Sam speaks, everyone has their notebooks and pens out and is like verbatim writing down word for word. They're like, can you say that again? And it started to become this thing where we had Erica, who was our note taker, and Caitlin, and they were just like writing novels of things that you were saying. And I was like, wow, no one's writing down my stuff. Like, how come I don't talk like that? How come I can't say these quotable sentences? And why does she sound like she's in a TED Talk 24/7? Like you do. And it just I made it mean something about me.
Right. Instead of just like appreciating it and seeing it.
Totally.
Yeah,
as
it's the turning
something
against the self.
You do, and that I love about you. I made that wrong about me, that I'm quote unquote not like that. What that really pointed to though was, okay, but in what ways am I helping this group? In what ways do I show up to support our clients? And again, it wasn't until I could fully see and appreciate what I bring and the color and textures that I bring. It wasn't until then that I could then fully appreciate you. Because it's not like I didn't appreciate it at all. It was more just, it would have this twinge of, wow, I want to be like that. And we can aspire and be inspired through jealousy, actually. And that's another thing that I love to alchemize jealousy through is, can that be inspiring for me to see something that I love and appreciate and want to try to embody and practice, and let that be something that I grow into, not something that I can never do or never be. Because even for like the softness that you were talking about, like you have gotten a lot softer.
Yeah, I have been able to express that energy more, and I've also just learned to appreciate the energies that I express more easily.
Yes,
I'm just a more activating person. Like, and I feel like that's why we work together. The point is not for me to be you and for you to be me. The point is for you to be you and for me to be me.
Yes.
Like, and that's why. And I think that's another beautiful thing about humanity is we're like a mosaic, right? It's like the whole thing coming together is so beautiful. It's not that you have to be like another person. It's like that really cheesy quote, like, be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Yes.
But it's true.
It's true. It's true. And I think, in me giving myself permission to be fully myself and loving all of those parts of me, including my shadow, that's how I've been able to completely experience jealousy without the story.
Yeah. And I mean, loving the shadow is like how you get to be really the person who pioneers the work for other people to work on. Like
Yes.
for me, getting to know all the things in my shadow, I am so much that more apt to be able to help people in those places.
Yeah.
So That's another crazy thing. The more you do your own shadow work, the more helpful you are to other people.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're able to now see people in their shadowy patterns, if you will, because, I mean, you've gotten to know your shadowy parts. And I feel like if anything, what we do is really help people own the parts of them that they really hate and want to unconsciously repress and reject, which we're basically revealing in this conversation that that's what keeps you from having the conscious partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
Because consciousness literally is seeing and bringing what is unconscious to the light.
Yeah.
Right? So much of what we talk about in this podcast about shadow work is related to Carl Jung's work, which is all about, whatever you do not shed the light on will run your life. And then what's the quote? Call it fate.
Yeah.
Right? So you're looking at everything that is shadowy and dark and that you don't want to express. And you're finding the courage to vulnerably share that. And you're finding that actually that's what makes you feel connected, which is so funny because you keep rejecting it because you think that's the thing that's going to make me unloved, unlikable, right? Rejected. And it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Actually, you haven't seen the show Baby Reindeer, have you?
No, but you've talked about it extensively.
Yeah, I don't want to give like anything away, but I'll just like basically make my general statement. But the show, I think, does the most incredible job of showcasing the emotion of shame and what it does to a person, and how, of course, people become like a repressed version of themselves. Like they're playing out all these weird things mentally, and there's somatic felt things that are happening in their body. But they only feel free when they finally share the thing that they feel the most shame about.
Yeah.
And so doing the uncomfy, like darker work is actually your ticket to freedom.
Yep.
And the more willing you are to do that with your own self and in people and with partnerships or relationships that you feel close with, the closer you're going to feel, the more free you're going to feel, the more love you're going to feel.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm just so glad we've had the courage and vulnerability to go to those places.
Well, yeah, Brene Brown says that shame thrives on secrecy, silence, and judgment. And when I experienced jealousy before, I would keep it secret, I'd keep it silent, and I would judge it. And it wasn't until I showed it to you that it actually was set free. All of a sudden, I could see the gift in the jealousy, and that's where we're at now, where if I were to ever experience that, again, I don't see it as a bad thing that I'm doing wrong, because sometimes there's a narrative of, oh, you shouldn't be jealous of your friends. But then, like, who else would you be jealous of?
Honestly.
People like you don't know, which is not even real anyway. But this is where you're going to experience that, and let that be okay. And to look underneath that emotion and see what is it covering. And I think once again, the jealousy for me was just simply pointing to all the ways that I was not appreciating my own gifts. Now, for somebody else's story, it might be, oh, maybe I'm jealous of somebody else's connection with somebody else. And that's pointing to a deep desire that you want to be connected with that person. Amazing. What a great way to understand the depths through which you want to be connected to that person. Now you can respond to that desire of connection and not the shame of having the jealousy in the first place.
Yeah,
It really
because
just is a signal.
the more you shame the jealousy, actually, the more you have it.
It's exactly.
Like it actually doesn't go away.
Yes.
Because the need's not being met.
Yeah.
Right. Because the emotion comes up because there's an unmet need.
Yeah.
And I think understanding all of your own emotions and your friends' emotions through that lens of like emotions literally express unmet needs without language. The more you understand and integrate that, the better you are able to meet yourself and other people. Yeah.
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 It's been such a beautiful evolution, though, because, I mean, I was not the same person I was when you met me 5 years ago.
I mean, I want to say that you were like a child. You were so young, but
Yeah.
you were.
I was. I had a lot of intellectual awareness, which I think a lot of people who listen to this do.
Yeah.
But I think the real work is like, can you know yourself beyond like being attached to your mind? Like, can you know your emotional body? That is a whole different segment of the journey. And getting to know my emotions, especially the ones I'm like, ew, I hate this, has been so empowering. And that's why, I mean, I don't know if I said it in the podcast but that's why I started acting.
Yes.
My acting classes.
You did. I think you shared it on one of the episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted to actually actively explore those emotions. And it's so interesting when you are embodying a character in a scene, if you will, the point is not to judge the emotion.
Yeah.
Every single character embodiment will come about through the exploration of their wants and needs, which is so funny. It's like I'm doing this now as like a character study, but now I'm like, wait, what about like me, Sam, the character? Like, can I study me and like understand all of my behaviors and emotions through the lens of wants and needs? Because if we don't understand emotions through the lens of wants and needs, what we do is we just judge and reject.
Yeah.
And that severs the connection.
What's actually so funny too is when it comes to maybe appreciating or experiencing jealousy of somebody else's qualities or skill sets, like that's the person who could probably like help you and teach you.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because
And then you end up avoiding them, which is so funny.
Yeah, but I think between you and I, we have helped each other access these things. Like again, with that softness and the emotionality, and you've definitely taught me confidence and to speak my truth more openly. And that was something that I used to always admire about you. Like, wow, like Sam can just like say it like it is. And I used to make that mean something about me of like, oh, how come I can never do that? That must mean I'm weak. But you're the one who then could be my teacher for that. And so instead of it being this thing, again, that's in secrecy, openly being able to talk to you about it actually allows me to learn more of how to embody that.
Absolutely. And I think it really takes an integrated knowing within yourself that you are whole, whether or not you express that quality or not. So then when you get jealous of a quality, then it's an opportunity to be like, oh, I want to learn how to do that more. And when you think about learning a skill, right, it's not necessarily superior to know it better than when you're a beginner.
So
although
true.
we can project that, right?
Yes.
But you're just learning something. Like, okay, like I didn't know how to like snowboard, but then I learned, right? And I'm not more worthy and valuable because I know how as opposed to when I didn't.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also key, is understanding that whether I learn how to do this or not, I am whole and worthy, or express this fully or not, but I want to use this opportunity or this emotion as an opportunity to understand that I do want to learn that.
Yeah.
And then go about that journey without making it mean, oh, I should already know this, or like I should already be like this, or like I shouldn't feel like this. But just, oh, that's indicating to me that I want to learn that.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I just want to say, these really open conversations between us, I mean, it led to actually several on this trip. It started at the airport when we both were like, are we still best friends? And then we were on the plane. We talked for another 7 hours. And then we like had some time before the girls came. We watched that sunrise. And I'll never forget the last day. We actually went out on to the paddleboard.
Oh, yeah.
And I am not a water sports person.
You're not a sports person.
I don't even know why I said water sports. Yeah, I am not a sports active person at all. And Sam was like, just come on. And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, I'll do all the rowing. I said, okay, fine. I'll just be a princess on this paddleboard. And we went out into the middle of the ocean. And I just remember like I just grabbed her hands and we just looked at each other face to face. And I just started wailing. And it was because it was this opening to a different portal to our friendship, I feel, because we'd been able to share the darkest, most secretive, shameful parts that we felt so scared to share. And so when you are in a conscious friendship, know that that's actually what's going to bring you guys closer. Like I actually now look forward to the times where there might be a sticky emotion, because I know that that's just another foundational brick to our friendship and glue, honestly.
But then it's also so weird, the more close you become, like actually the less triggered you get.
100%.
It's like the path to becoming close is like the trigger, but the closer you get, the less triggered you are.
Yeah.
Because you've done that work. And so I would say if you're getting really triggered by someone right now that you're really close friends with, that's a season of your relationship.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say you're gonna get triggered forever. I mean, you will have moments, right? But it's not gonna be as intense as it is now.
Yeah.
It's intense right now because you need to look at something. Right? And once you've looked at that intensity like goes away. It's like exposure therapy, right?
It really is.
It goes away. So now if I experience something similar, it doesn't have the same impact and intensity. And so, I mean, I would say I'm not very triggered by you actually at this time. I don't think I am.
At this time.
Time.
I mean, I feel like we've talked now, like we've actually shared quite a few things, I would say in the past couple of months, that were our very, very deep, dark, shameful things. Actually, after we recorded one of the episodes, we went and talked at a coffee shop and more shameful stuff came up. And it was actually really funny because you were like, I already know that about you. And do you remember that?
Yeah, well, it's really funny. Like the things that we think we're really good at hiding from our friends, it's like it's already written all over their face. It's like it's not a secret.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because we think, oh my God, if they know though, then like they are gonna judge me and like they are gonna think I'm like worse than I really am or like worse than they think that I am. And it's so funny because anytime I've said something or you said something, it's like I already knew that.
Right.
And you're like realizing they already loved you despite that.
Right.
And
right.
then you feel more whole
Yeah.
and accepted because you're not hiding from yourself.
Yeah. But I think because we've had, like, I feel like at this point there's like no more skeletons. There's nothing that I've been kind of repressing or rejecting or scared to share. And because of that, I think that's why there's not as much room for those triggers. I think now it's more like a place we've been before.
Yeah.
And so if I were to bring up whatever, the same topics as before or brought up a jealousy comparison thing, we've kind of already been there. So it's a lot easier for us to move through it. There's no need for over explaining. There is kind of a common ground of understanding. And also room to know maybe she feels differently now than before. Because once again, we don't want to assume that because we've had this conversation before that it's going to be the same going forward. So again, it does get easier the more hard conversations you have.
It does get easier. We also like have named a lot of our wounds, right? You're like, oh, that's your stupid wound. And
Yes.
I'm like, yep. Or like I can name it in myself too.
Yes.
So I don't have to be like, oh, you made me feel stupid. I'm like, oh, my stupid wound is like
Yes.
rearing its head and I'm like feeling dumb about this thing. And then you're
Yes.
like, oh my God, like you're totally not, but like it makes sense that you would.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's over. Like
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. And then mine's like, oh, I did the comparison wound again. You're like, oh no, like,
I'm like, oh no.
well, what happened? I said, well, it was this and that. And we can just kind of talk about it so openly and
Like it's the weather.
like it's the weather. Now that's our small talk.
Yeah. Honestly, it's whatever starts off as big talk, it does eventually become
Right.
littler talk, right? Because there's less emotional intensity underneath.
Yes.
Like that's the thing. We've like squeezed all the like shameful negative emotion out of it and now it's just like trickles of water. We're like, oh, I'll just wipe that up.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm so grateful that we had those conversations in Mexico because they were just so emotional. We weren't triggered at all by each other.
No.
It wasn't actually out of any form of trigger, but more just this is what I've been moving through because actually I have a very deep comparison wound. I would probably say I would argue maybe my core wound. I grew up with a mom that compared me constantly to other people and would ask why I can't be more like this other person. And this started when I was pretty young, like I want to say 7 years old. And that's really where you start to form your identity. And so a layer for me was having compassion for this part of me because I kept kicking myself of like, how could you compare yourself to your best friend, right? I was doing that thing of shaming myself for having shame. And
shame for shame.
Yeah, shame for shame. And so I think for me, understanding that core wound, I knew that was my inner work to do. And I went through that season of time. And I just knew at the retreat that was kind of where I felt ready to really bring it to light. Because again, you already freaking knew about this stuff within me.
I wasn't like, I've never heard this before.
Yes.
This is so unfamiliar.
But it was more me kind of like unveiling. I just did this like I was taking off my clothes.
Yeah.
But that's not what I mean. It's just the layers.
Unlayered. The unlayered self.
I just opened the full closet and turned on all the lights. And I said, this is fully how I've been feeling. This is how hard it's been for me. And I just want you to know that. And it was just met with so much love and understanding. And then you were then able to share things that you were comparing, which I was so surprised to even hear. And it was just healing all around. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and all of these too require you to heal your people-pleasing wound because your people-pleasing wound will be like, I don't want to like upset the peace, like I don't want to rock the boat. And it's like, well, if you never bring up anything that's a little bit difficult, then you're never going to actually get across the ocean. Like
Yes.
the boat needs a little bit of velocity to get across. And so I think that that desire to like not make people unhappy or like to bring down the mood, like that was a big fear for mine.
That
like,
was a big one for you.
yeah, like I don't want to like bring down the mood. Like
I was
I'm
like,
all,
let's bring it down.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. You express so much comfortability with being in a down mood. You're like, no, I like turning on sad music and just looking out the window and crying. And I'm like, you do? So it made it obvious to me then that it was okay to do that. But maybe someone who's listening to this hasn't felt that yet from someone. So it could feel really uncomfortable to be like the downer, right? But it's like, embrace that. Like, everyone's going to have a moment in life where they're going to be the downer. And in life, you're going to be the upper. Like, I think that every person who's ever been the life of the party, like, there has to be an equal and opposite time that they were not the life of the party.
Yes, that's very true.
Right? But I thought I was, like, beloved for being the life of the party. Like,
I mean, you kind of were.
I kind of was.
And you kind of are still. I mean, that is just
it's still a part. It's a part of
Yes,
me. But
yeah.
I wanted to know that I would also be accepted for coming into the party, so to speak, or the conversation, and, like, not being that person. Like,
Yeah.
is it okay if I show up and I'm like, I don't feel the vibes today? Like, is it okay if I show up and I'm like, hey guys, like, sorry to bring down the mood, but, like, I feel like shit right now, right? But I used to think that was so horrifying. But what I found, similar to that show I was talking about, Baby Reindeer, when I bring it up that I feel like shit or that I'm really sad, people, like, actually embrace me.
Yeah.
They don't reject me.
Yeah, and then that was your work to not to embrace and not reject yourself in those emotions, right? But going back to the people pleasing thing, something I just taught a section in my metamorphosis program about people pleasing and shifting the perspective from, oh, I'm doing something good for this person by not upsetting them. A different lens you can look through is seeing it as people like deceiving.
People deceiving. You're literally lying.
You are lying, and it's to control the person's thoughts and feelings about you in a positive light, which is it's quite manipulative.
Yeah, they don't actually have accurate perceptions of you now.
Yes.
Like, now who they think you are is based on your deception.
Exactly. And so once I could see that, and this is not something to shame yourself about as well now.
A lot of it's unconscious too.
Yeah, and so I could see that me trying to hide certain things was deceiving. To this person that I love and want to have this open conversation with. And I also had the knowing that for everything that I'm keeping and hiding, there's probably an equivalent that you are keeping and hiding too. And so the more that we can openly share that, it gives that permission to the other person to share that as well, which we've said many times. And so, yeah, let this be your sign to say the hard things.
It brings you closer.
It does bring you closer. And of course, you're going to find your footing in terms of the way to deliver things as well. But that's all part of getting to know this person. Like, even as a mom, like, I'm constantly learning about how to bring things up to my child. Actually, I did something recently that did not go over well. It was something that I thought was really playful, and she did not take it that way. But I needed to learn that. Like, that taught me a lot of valuable information about her.
And you didn't get defensive. You weren't like, oh, this was just supposed to be a joke. Like,
totally.
You were like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry. You were like, I didn't know you were going to take it that way. And, like, meeting that person, your child,
my child,
in those feelings.
Yeah. So have the hard conversations. But I think even before you do that, having that hard conversation with yourself, can you really meet yourself with the kind of compassion that you need, and let that first be the safe space you go to. And when you have that internal safety, then no matter how the other person responds, you're going to have that safety within you. You're not going to the other person for that safety.
Yeah, but also what's really interesting is the more internal safety you have with that thing, the more the other person senses it and the less reactive they are.
It's so true.
Yeah, because if I bring an emotion that I don't feel okay with, we can feel the not okayness. And then it feels like what you're trying to do often is, like, get rid of it because it's not okay.
Yeah.
But if I sense that you are okay with it, then I'm like, oh, I don't need to, like, be reactive. I can just be with it. So you taught me that, because you would show up many times in our life and be like, I feel sad today. And I'm like, oh. And I can feel that you're okay with it.
Right.
So then I'm just kind of like okay with it and accepting it. But if you were like, I'm not okay, like, I like, or whatever you were doing, you're like, and it's because you did this, I'd be like, what? Like, and now I need to react, and it's like a flurry of emotion.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like Gina said, come back to the first connection point, which is
you and you.
You and you. Yeah. All the consciousness begins there.
It really is that. And I think we really hit this point a lot in the toxic relationship conversation. But I just want to say again that one of the best byproducts of being in a conscious relationship with you has been how much deeper I like love and see myself.
Yes.
And they really go in tandem, because the more that I love and see myself, the more that I can be in conscious relationship with you. And it really just is this, I don't even know what to call it. It works in tandem.
Yeah, and the more I see you, the more I see me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the more you can see me having compassion for my parts, the more you can have compassion for yours. And so it really is this mirrored thing. And so for anybody doing the work, it's such a gift to be around people in your life, in your close life, that are also doing the work. And I really see that a lot of people don't have that, but for the ones that do, sometimes there is a little bit of grippiness of not wanting to lose that. And so we try to kind of keep ourselves in a certain box in effort to like not lose that or not to mess things up. But again, it's in quote unquote messing those things up that it'll actually make the whole thing stronger. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like going from beginner learning a language to like expert level. And you're like, this is so
Yes.
much fun. Like I don't have to like look in the dictionary for what word I'm gonna use. It just takes your relationships to a whole nother level. And so, of course, as always, we encourage you to join the free Spiraling Higher community. We have our connection calls, free calls. I was going to say next week, but this episode, you may not hear it when it happens. So
Yeah.
it'll be the last Sunday of the month whenever you're hearing this, which is so exciting. And then if you really want to take the work deeper and work one-on-one and in groups and retreat with us for 6 months, you can look into the Unlayered Self. That is our 6-month coaching mastermind. All of the details for that are going to be in the show notes. And it's where our past clients have found some of the most incredibly life-changing conscious relationships. And I think it was their biggest takeaway from the program.
Yeah, I want to say almost every single one of them actually did not have the kind of relationship that they desired when it came to doing this work together and being able to use the same language. And they all left with, 5 conscious besties, and they still support each other. Of course they do,
Yeah.
but it's so beautiful to see. Sometimes they'll message me and say, oh, I just talked to her and she helped me through this. And it's just so beautiful to see. So that is one of the deep intentions of that, of the Unlayered Self container, is also to experience what it feels like to be in that kind of relationship.
Yes.
Because up until I really never knew what this felt like. And so, yeah, if you feel called, apply, book your free call with us. At the very least, you'll be able to have a conversation with us and for us to kind of give some insight into anything you're going through. And we just want to meet you and talk to you. So
Yeah, it's super exciting. We can't wait. And if you are inside of the free community, remember there's a post in there, I think in Pod Talk.
actually, it's in that and in the community chit chat.
Yeah, there's a couple of different spaces within our community, but there's a form in there that says Q&A, like any questions. So we're looking to our audience to inspire us, to bring the conversations to them that they want to hear. This conversation is ultimately for you.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of people asking about conscious relationships, so we're excited to talk about more things that are resonating with you at this time or confusing you at this time. It can be anything personal, spiritual, relational.
Yeah, anything at all. What do you want to know? What do you want to hear? Because we also want to do some more fun kind of Q&A questions between you and I, which we already released one of those, I think by now. So yeah, bring us your questions, DM us, chat with us in the group, in the community, and I guess we'll see you on the next one.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this honest conversation. We hope it brought you peace, clarity, and a little bit further along your spiritual journey.
If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to us if you left us a 5-star rating and a review so we can bring you more conscious conversations, spiritual topics, and guests.
And we lovingly invite you to join our free Spiraling Higher community by clicking the link in the show notes to continue this healing dialogue and share with us how this episode impacted you.
Come on in, introduce yourself, and meet your conscious besties in a safe space for healing conversations between us and other like-minded people on their healing journey.
Here's to Spiraling Higher.